All right, so we've got some stuff regarding the Pac 12 and some other crap I can't remember right now that we're going to discuss. But the first thing, I mean, this is just remarkable here. The Pac 12 has come out and admitted, yes, we were offered $30 million from ESPN in the fall of 2022. The network wanted more than that. We said we wanted around $50 million per school. This is after it's already been confirmed that USC and UCLA are leaving the conference. They still wanted $50 million. I guess you can kind of understand that's how negotiations work. They probably wanted to meet somewhere in the middle, but if they would have accepted the $30 million from ESPN, it could have alleviated a lot of the issues. And I'm going to assume that this Pac-12 would still be together if they would have accepted this deal, because if you are Arizona, Arizona State, Colorado, going from the Pac-12 to the Big 12, $30 million being on ESPN, going to the Big 12 where, you're making $1 million more, maybe $2 million more after probably a few years because they're going to join it and they might not get the full cut. It makes complete sense to stay in the Pac-12. Washington and Oregon, it's a little bit different how that would have worked out. But I would be shocked if Arizona, Arizona State, those schools would have joined the Big 12 with this offer on the table, because their final offer that we saw from Apple TV really wasn't that bad. It was 25 million. It could have escalated. The reason they all declined it and left is because it was Apple TV. It was streaming. There's no ESPN. There's no Fox. That is the main culprit. This would have been through ESPN getting all the main games, and it seems like, ESPN offering them $30 million per year. They end up coming back and saying, well, give us 50, and then ESPN's response is goodbye, it's not happening. So I guess they were just off the market at that point. They didn't want to do a deal with the Pac-12, but there was also a report that came out that ESPN really lowballed the Pac-12 towards the end. Either way, the Pac-12 is officially done. And then we've got this article, Pac-12 4 have met without George K. to discuss the future. The next move depends on a decision from its big brand, which is Stanford. And I've been speculating on Stanford, their pursuit of the Big Ten, ACC, and possibly becoming an independent. The American Conference versus the Mountain West and their fight, and the long shot of rebuilding the Pac-12. So you can see, how does Stanford get left out? Stanford, one college administrator just completely shocked. Well, Stanford right now is not a big college football team. They're not a big school in terms of that. They don't get great ratings. That is how they really got left out. And even with them being, at this point down, the Big Ten was still in contact with them. I still think they're headed to the Big Ten, even if it takes a year. That's probably going to be happening. Is the Cardinal in terms of rebuilding the Pac-12, or out, possibly becoming an independent for a year? If it is in, restructuring the Pac-12 begins in earnest. The 4 schools have scheduled 6 games next football season, 3 non-conference games and 3 against themselves. Yeah, how is that going to work exactly? Who are they going to face? Are they just going to have 6 non-conference games next year? Or is Stanford going to declare in the coming days, or maybe, I don't know when the timeline is for them to declare themselves as an independent next season, but you have to think that's where this is probably going. And this article talks about reforming the Pac-12, saying while difficult, it's not impossible. It's premature to say the conference is dead. No, the conference is dead. There's less than half teams remaining in the conference, so even if they rebuilt it, I would not consider it the Pac-12. When you lose more than 50% of your teams in the conference, it's a completely different scenario. The NCAA requires 8 members to be recognized as an FBS conference, though there is a grace period of 2 years. According to an NCAA bylaw, a conference shall continue to be considered an FBS league for 2 years after it drops below the 8-team threshold. So theoretically, they could be a 4-team league for the next several years. That would be hilarious. The quickest and easiest route in reforming is to acquire the mostly Western schools in the American, such as SMU, UTSA, North Texas, Rice, Tulane, and possibly the Sun Belt's Texas State. Wow. So this is the first time I've heard about Texas State going to join the Pac-4. It seems improbable. SMU, I mean, if I was SMU, I would not be interested in joining this foursome. I would, if I'm SMU, I'm thinking Big 12 or ACC. UTSA, I think, would be interested. North Texas. Didn't North Texas just join the American? I mean, how does that work? And then Rice, they've got a nice TV market. To leave, these schools would owe an exit fee as they are well past the 27 months notice that the American requires. While the exit fee is negotiable with conference leaders, schools have previously left for 10 to 17 million, but the cost could be significantly higher since schools would be given notice inside of a year. The Mountain West exit fee, 34 million, is what's preventing the 4 Pac-12 teams from prying its members from the league, at least in time for 2024. Adding any Mountain West school for 2025 costs $17 million. So I guess that would be the idea. If you want to go into the Mountain West and take teams from there, you're looking at San Diego State, maybe Boise State. There's some other teams I'm sure you could look at. And I'm sure they would oblige to leaving the Mountain West. Look at San Diego State. They're desperate to get out and join possibly a Power 5 conference and reap all of those benefits. Rebuilding the Pac-12 is fraught with problems, most notably the attractiveness of joining 4 schools that do not have a TV deal, have a commissioner who is unlikely to continue in the long term. It's a disaster situation. If you add 4 schools, you would have an argument to keep CFP A5, says one Pac-12 source, but it would be an uphill battle. Seems like a lot of negatives. It is. Take these 2 comments from 2 different administrators at American schools where programs earn around 8 to 9 million a year in distribution. The fear is that Stanford and or Cal will eventually go to the Big Ten and they'd leave us behind. Yeah, so if you're an American school looking to join the Pac-4, that is just not a stable position at all. Do we really think Stanford is going to continue this wishy-washy, we're going to be in a crappy conference? It just, with their prestige, it seems so unlikely. And the Big Ten does this thing where they'll add 2 teams, then they'll wait, then the next year they'll add 2 teams, then they'll wait. I mean, they contacted both Washington and Oregon last year now with those TV numbers I just reported from ESPN offering them $30 million. Do I still think Oregon and Washington, with that offer, would they go to the Big Ten still? I think they would. I mean, $30 million is just nowhere close to what they would get from the Big Ten, even if they're coming in making 50% the first few years. It's an investment over time. Eventually, you will be making $70 million per year, which is over double the $30 million. So Oregon and Washington inevitably were always going to the Big Ten. And the point I'm trying to make is Stanford will inevitably be in the Big Ten. That it's happening. It's a question of when, not if. And these American schools, the geography doesn't make any sense. It seems like a nightmare logistically. And why is there a better deal than what we have now, asks another. I mean, you could get probably a slightly better deal if it is a Power 5 league. Technically, you'll get more benefits, but you're also joining an unstable conference with the main team, Stanford, likely leaving. Joining or merging with the Mountain West. So this is another option for the Pac-12. Mountain West presidents met on Monday night to explore their options. The league has granted the commissioner permission to communicate with the Pac-12-4 as well as enter discussion with the Mountain West TV partners, CBS and Fox, about potential expansion. One more simple option for the 4 or 3. See, notice how they're saying 3. I think the expectation is Stanford will be an independent, and the threesome, Oregon State, Washington State, Cal, will go somewhere to join the Mountain West. Oregon State and Washington State were 2 of the lowest resourced Power 5 teams anyhow. From a resource and geographic and cultural perspective, they'd fit in with the conference. Cal, too, maybe. However, Stanford, again, is different. Would the school join as a full-time member? Many believe it would not, but desperate times call for desperate measures. However, some in the Mountain West Conference would be receptive to offering the school a home for its Olympic sports if it chooses to be independent in football. So, oh my goodness, they're hinting at Stanford becoming the next Notre Dame, joining the Mountain West in other sports but staying independent in football. Possibly the next option for these four, joining the American Conference. The AAC has been in contact, like the Mountain West, with the Pac-12 for communication is in the early stages and ongoing. While geographically and culturally such a move makes little sense, nothing makes sense in the world of conference realignment. Oregon will soon play a conference game at Rutgers. Yeah, well, that's fully based on money. This is a little different than that, I think, because you're just sacrificing travel for such little to gain if you're those Pac-4 schools, I feel like. Although, I don't know, the American Conference is kind of in the middle of the country at this point. There's schools in Texas, so I don't think it's that horrifically bad. But then they do say, why can't Washington State play at Florida Atlantic? The mileage between those two is 3,000. Well, it's just a little bit different. Like Oregon, they're fine with the issues in terms of travel. Number one, there's a West Wing, which I guess there would also be a West Wing because there'd be the Pac-4 playing in the American. But number two, they're going to be making like $70 or $80 million in 5 years, man. So they don't care about the travel because they're making a ridiculous amount of money. And just, this conference would not produce that type of money, obviously. The addition of the four or three of the four or even two of the four gives the conference a greater chance to land a college football playoff berth in the expanded playoff where the top group of five champion gets an automatic berth. They're changing that. Yeah, they're going to be changing that. It's not going to be that is not going to be permitted once the format gets updated because there's going to be so much competitiveness in the Power 2 conferences, the Big Ten and the SEC. They will not be giving an automatic berth to a group of five team. And the other issue is the group of five got watered down because of the Texas and Oklahoma move to the SEC. The Big 12 had to panic scramble to keep their conference together, and they sniped all of the best teams from the American. And all those teams went from group of five to Power 5. So there is not going to be an automatic bid for the group of five in the college football playoff because the group of five has been watered down so severely. I am not against the group of five. If one of those teams, goes undefeated, if they're 12-1, absolutely they should be considered. They should probably be in. But at this point, we're running out of teams in the group of five to really consider. And the other thing is you're going to have teams imagine you're in the SEC and you're 9-3. But your three losses are at Alabama versus Georgia and at LSU. That's kind of the issue right there. The conferences are going to be so stacked. There's going to be so many tough games. It's going to be hard to make an auto bid. And then it's just a weird situation overall. But that's the general gist of the Pac-12 trying to have a rebirth and trying to survive. In general, it doesn't seem like it's happening, but those are just kind of the sources and what they're saying when it comes to that. And then obviously the TV deal, I think this would have kept the conference together, but it is a situation where Oregon and Washington would still leave. Let's be honest, now that I think about it. And, they would, Arizona State, Colorado, and Utah probably would stay, but the conference would be watered down. I think it would be together, but it would be watered down. But that is going to do it for this video, guys. Make sure you're following me on X. Link to that's always in the description.